Everybody good? Any questions?
What's the prevailing thing that stood out to you reviewing the way the season ended over the last 2 days?
Look, I think specifically in the game, obviously it started out well, getting a turnover early, and we settled for a field goal on that drive. I think we knew it was going to be a hard-fought game, kind of back and forth. I thought early on both defenses played well. I thought we struggled offensively, particularly in the first half. Our third down numbers were just 1 of 4. In the second half, we started moving it a little bit better. I think the turnover differential ended up being 1 in their favor. I thought in the first half we struggled protecting Drew more than we would have liked. And then, look, it came down to, there's a handful of things. It's always frustrating as a coach when you watch it. You miss a field goal at the end of half. Our kicker's been fantastic all season. We come back in the second half, and we get a little bit of momentum there, and we have the turnover after Taysom's long run. I think the overtime drive, Kirk makes a fantastic throw to Thielen on that play, and obviously the play prior, Marshawn had gone out. But look, when you watch the catch and throw, those guys really did a nice job. And I said it after the game, it was a hard-fought game. It was obviously difficult to end your season like that, and yet those guys made a few more plays than we did. We kind of move into the next phase for us is the evaluation of our own personnel before we do anything else, and so we'll be doing that the next week and a half, and then you begin to look at upgrading or improving the roster as best you can, and that's either via the players in this league or the players that are going to be coming up through the draft.
In a perfect world, do you want all 3 quarterbacks back, or do you feel like you have to choose between them almost, even financially?
Yeah, look, we haven't gotten that far yet. I like the perfect world scenario, and yet we don't live in one. So we haven't even gotten that far down the road yet. Mickey and I will spend a lot of time meeting. We'll meet on all these topics. We've got a handful, as we do every year, unrestricted free agents, and then a few restricted free agents. All of those players will be guys that we spend a lot of time on, and hopefully make the right decisions on.
Sean, what was the parting message to the team?
Look, there was no, on the challenge in the postseason with our league is, there's two plans in place. You're meeting Monday, you're getting ready to play Green Bay, or you're meeting Monday and you're in your exit meeting with the players and physicals, and so it was more organizational relative to the offseason, relative to the players that were dealing with injuries. Obviously, everyone's disappointed. You'd like to continue playing, and there's that finality of it. So, but it's typically, John, one of those meetings where you're really kind of covering all the things that they need to know relative to what's coming up from an off-season standpoint, physicals, all the things that need to take place in the next week.
Sean, Drew's always said it's year by year at this point. Do you wait for him to make a decision, or do you reach out to maybe talk to him about that decision or shape that decision in any way?
Well, listen, to date we've not had to do any of that, and I wouldn't, it'd be too early to say. I just finished talking to him 5 minutes ago, and it was about something else. It was about LSU tickets. So it's just, we just played 2 days ago, so we're clearly not even at that stage relative to our own roster. And I think it's always best that there's time that takes place between the last game, and even when you begin to do what we do next, I think it's important that there's some time in between that, because you want to really give the true evaluation of your roster. I'm talking about all the other positions, but Yeah, I'm sure Mickey and myself but there's not that formal call, or I think, look, there'll be a gap of time here, and I can't speak for Drew as to, you know, his wants. I think he wants to play more, and I think that, shoot, we saw him play at a high level, and we just, you know, we'll discuss every player on the roster, himself included, but I don't anticipate this grandiose meeting or phone call anytime soon. We'll go through the numbers, we'll go through the team, and then try to do what's best for the team as well.
Sean, how do you balance knowing you guys were 13-3 and have a really good roster and had a really good regular season, and when you go into the offseason, kind of where you need to focus in on? How do you kind of?
Yeah, there's some clear things though relative to a really good roster. There's some areas that maybe we see differently or see clearly relative to where we can improve that I think are going to be important. And yet, I think one of the benefits of the roster this year was really the depth relative to some injuries that we had. Guys were able to play. I mean, we played a handful of defensive backs. We played a couple 3 fullbacks. You know, the same way at receiver and tight end, and the same way particularly in the offensive line. So, you know, we met yesterday just briefly on our unrestricted free agents and our restricted free agents, but there's some musts right now that are, at least in my mind, positions that we've got to solidify to be better, and I think we'll try to do that any way, shape, or form.
Any specific?
No, no, nothing specific right now.
Going back to the game, I was curious because after a game, there's always talk about how you use your timeouts or clock management or whatever. But what was going through your mind in regards to how to use the timeouts at the end, playing to either win or tie, and having that last?
Well, number one, we valued the last time out. So the unique thing that came up is, you know, we had that option of a 10-second runoff, burn the 10 seconds, keep the timeout, or give them the timeout and now be without a timeout. So Drew and I, if you watch during that quick break, are sitting there, and both he and I both valued the timeout. You know, because that just gives you so much more freedom relative to play calling, and so we knew, look, the field goal, number one, was paramount, and then the challenge always when you get down to what we had left on the clock is you're going to just see a much different type of defense in the end zone. And so, look, I would have liked to not had to make that decision, and when we were clocking the football, we need to obviously be set. So I thought, you know, how we handled that, I don't know how far. We had 1:55 when the drive started, and so, yeah, there was nothing earth-shattering about, you know, what we chose to do there. There's some plays that you would have liked to have had maybe differently, but, you know, getting into that situation without a timeout is just a little bit trickier.
I would think just knowing how fast this team can run the 2-minute drill around 1:55 or 2 minutes, you're probably thinking, like, just having it just in case something goes wrong and being outside for a field goal.
Your goal initially when the drill starts is let's make sure we put ourselves in a position to kick a field goal, and if we get close enough then with time remaining, then let's figure out a way to win it. But specifically when we clock the ball, there's a penalty. I think it was 21 seconds, or we're right there as to that. You want 11 or 21. One's going to have a timeout, the other's not. I think we both felt 11 with the timeout was a better option for us at that time rather than 21, because you're still at, you know, anything that stays in play, you're at a Mayday alert. You're running onto the field, and you can potentially, with a timeout in 11 seconds, have a little bit more luxury.
Sean, last couple of seasons, you guys have brought in different wide receivers. This class upcoming for the NFL draft seems pretty deep. Is that an intriguing thing to you guys?
I haven't seen the class at all yet. We'll be probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I'll be made aware of. I've heard that it's a pretty good receiver class, but yeah, all of those options we'll look closely at. You know, I think we're picking at 24. We'll start with the free agency. You know, where do we feel like some of these areas that we feel are must? Where can we fill them? If it's deep in another area, then that helps to know that. But that's just one position group. There's a handful of areas though where we're going to be looking closely to see if we can find the right player.
Sean, I know he was here for only a short amount of time. But what do you think about Janoris Jenkins?
Thought he did well. Look, he's a real good foot athlete. He's smart. He came in and competed. You know, obviously he was in great shape, but I was encouraged and impressed.
The Carolina Panthers hired Matt Rule today. Did you have a chance to meet him when he worked
I
out
did.
here? What did you think?
No, he was really impressive. Jeff Ireland went to Baylor, and Jeff knew Matt, and Jeff had just came to me and said, hey, they're going to be practicing here. Would you want to maybe visit with him and the team? So it was during their week of preparations. The first time I met him, and then today I heard, just like you did, that Carolina hired him, and look, that's a great job for him, and he seemed. I was real impressed with their 3 years. You know, if I'm going to speak to some group that I don't really know that well, Kevin kind of pulled up some numbers for me, and their turnaround in 3 years relative to, you know, what they went through in his first year, the second year, it was real impressive, and they won a lot of games, and so I was impressed when I met him.
Do you think with the right moves that you could be back in this spot next year?
Well, we'll see. We'd like to think so. I mean, we're excited about the guys that we currently have, and our job now is to find, you know, the other players that we feel like can help us put ourselves in a position to compete again. Look, it's fresh off the season, and you know, you don't know how the regular season is going to go. I thought, obviously, you know, early on we handled some of the adversity pretty well, and you know, we found a way to win 13 games, which is hard to do. And you know, this league's funny. Sometimes 13, you know, can get you obviously a real high seed. In our case, you know, we were playing at home, but I think, yeah, the challenge will be finding a way to improve and put ourselves in that position. Absolutely.
Is it more challenging addressing those positions you feel are needs when you know that you've got a lot of talented guys about to hit their second?
No. I mean, managing the cap relative to your current roster is one thing, but look, I think we'll spend a lot of time on those decisions, and those are never easy. You have a fixed budget. You know, there's no luxury tax, or you can't overspend if you choose to. So those will be the things we deal with here in the next, you know, coming weeks.
Sean, you've had a pretty cohesive assistant coaching unit. I mean, do you think that might change?
Well, we lost Mike yesterday. You know, congrats to him. We're excited that he has that opportunity, and I've said this before. Look, when people are calling and interested, that's a good thing, and I think it's good for those guys to have those opportunities. It's a little bit more nerve-wracking when no one's calling. But I think we've got a handful of coaches on this staff that I think someday will be in a position or have that opportunity, hopefully. But Mike was the first one, you know, that we got a request sent in for.
Do you think there's a chance that you will lose, because of the numbers, that you will lose some talented young free agents as part of the deal?
Well, hopefully. Look, there's always that chance. There's always that chance. Our job is to try to protect, you know, as best we can, the guys that we feel like moving forward are going to help us the most. And that doesn't mean that a player or two that we'd like to have gets a chance to play somewhere else. That's part of the business. So, yeah, there's that chance. Absolutely exists.
In your experience in pro sports, to what extent is it possible that, in terms of team building, you feel like you've done almost everything right and it just doesn't work out sometimes? You know, like it
Doesn't work out relative to.
In other words, you feel like you've done just about everything you wanted to do team building wise, relative to the realistic expectations, and it just simply
But you didn't
doesn't-
win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, look, that's hard to do. It's hard to do. But that doesn't, the understanding that we're doing the right things relative to each step of the way, starting with the players in the off season, and how we train and how we practice, and all of those things, are easy to approach, because I think the players themselves and everyone in the building understands, hey, we're doing the right things, and that doesn't promise you the final game, and yet to get there you've got to win and continue to win, and that's the trick then. But yeah, all that being said, shoot, these guys, as disappointed as they were yesterday leaving, they understand the challenges of winning in the postseason. It's single elimination tournament.
Sean, I know near the end of the year you were quick to shoulder some of the lack of production for Kamara, but was he fighting an injury kind of near the back end of the year?
No. Listen, I felt like he was healthy, and there was a handful of things in that game Sunday relative to our running game that you look at and you're like, we might have done something a little bit. It wasn't. There's a handful of things you see from teams defensively, and Mike has done a great job there. They're going to play certain front and coverage, and yet I think he was healthy, and we saw him in the last couple games play well, and we just didn't have those numbers. When you go 1 of 4 on third down, just do the number count and then look at the possession. I mean, it all just plays itself out. So, yeah, I want to absolutely run the football, but you got to convert more third downs to have those opportunities.
This might be a silly follow-up, but I mean,
it wouldn't be. Go ahead.
As teams have more tape on him,
No.
have they defended him differently than they have previous years?
No, silly follow.
What are your thoughts right after the season, though, on sort of maximizing the production of both Kamara and Murray? Is that something you want to do more consistently?
Well, look, I think when you're moving the football, those aren't challenges. I think they're challenges when you have some penalties early on in downs, and your third down numbers are down, then it becomes challenging when you have less plays. But it was no different than the year before with Alvin and Mark.
Did Taysom end up with a bigger role towards the end of the season this year, and maybe surpass your expectations? Or?
Look, I think that we began looking at. It wasn't that we looked at him differently, but man, the more and more you kept watching, the more and more we felt like he's one of our better players and needs to be on the field. So to answer your question, yeah, I would say that even evolved more to the point where, obviously there's a read option element to when he's playing quarterback, but the deep pass he throws to Deontay was something that we felt might have a chance. He's got real good arm strength. I mean, he was exceptional Sunday. I mean, he was outstanding. And so, he's an exciting football player, and he does a lot of things well. I'm glad he's on our team.
Was his development as a receiver kind of born out of necessity after Traquan and Keith went down?
I started a year ago, actually, because you saw him block, and the challenge always is, are you going to get nickel defense or base defense? It's trying to game plan, because those are extremely different defensive looks, or potentially defensive looks, and we got a little bit more base with him in the game, in this last game, than in some weeks. But it's kind of evolved. He's someone that was good at a lot of different things, and we played him in that F role, if you will, quite a bit this year, and then the snaps he played at quarterback, it's like anything else. Do we have enough snaps and enough touches where he can get his hands on the ball? And that one series, he has the long pass, and the very next play he's blocking at the point of attack with Traquan and those guys, and we score. It's almost, his performance demands those opportunities.
Is that one of the trickier, maybe free agent players to deal with?
A little bit of
an
a little bit of an
You
enigma.
don't know how people value
Yeah.
him or what they may look at him as
Well, he's restricted,
right.
but yeah,
when you put
it's a
tag
little
on
bit.
it, sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a unique of an enigma. I mean, my understanding is you can't find a spot for him on your fantasy roster, so it's probably difficult for the reality of it. So, yeah.
Sean, was this year easier the way it ended? Was it easier to digest than last year, the way last year ended, or they're all the same?
Different. I mean, entirely different. Yeah, I mean, look, like I said after the game, you know, you hate to lose a game like that. You tip your hat to Minnesota, and Mike's a close friend, and obviously you want to play well and you want to win in advance. You know, there's certain things you look back on even during the year relative to your best positioning, but in that game you play over, you know, opportunities and you know, it's difficult losing in the postseason, but last year was different.
Doesn't Jenny's ice cream digest the same way?
Yeah, it's
no matter
different
when you
though.
eat it?
Yeah, it's different last year.
Hey, do you remember hearing about how Belichick said after they lost to you guys in 09 that he just knew somehow that that team wasn't a real Super Bowl team relative to what his expectations were? This team would be different, right? Where you may have thought all along until the very end that it was a Super Bowl team, or?
I don't know that. Look, I thought 11 was one of those teams, and the concern this year was, at this stage of the season, was where we were health-wise at some positions. But you know that in each week leading up to it, like, look, this Minnesota game was one that concerned me relative to, I just know how they played defensively, and you know, you knew it wasn't going to be a high-scoring game, and so, you know, time of possession, the turnovers were going to matter, and they did. But I don't know that you know, at the start of the tournament you thought, hey, this you got to earn that, and so I think that it would be really some of the injuries of, hey, are we healthy enough here? You know, we got nicked up at linebacker, we've got some injuries in the offensive line. We were getting healthy and guys were coming back, but yeah, the approach was one game at a time, and obviously, you know, putting our best foot forward against them.
How much did you miss rankings in depth toward the end of the year?
It's hard to put a number on that. I thought our front played well defensively. Our D-line, thought they played well in that game Sunday. So look, you hate to have some starters out, but I thought those guys, and some of the guys we were playing snaps with that hadn't played a lot, stood out. And look, you're sitting at 20-20 at the end of regulation, and you know, you had 2 turnovers offensively. You know, one of them on a short field for your defense, the other one on the other end of the field. But like anyone else, you miss starters that are out, and yet it's hard to put an exact tag on it.
Did you tell Drew to go ask Joe Brady for tickets?
Huh?
Or?
No.
He must owe you some at this point, right? I mean,
What's that?
he must owe you some tickets at this point.
We haven't called. Those guys will be busy. All right, thank you.